everyone to the public budget hearing of the Board of Education on Monday, April 26, 2021. Let's start our meeting as we do all our meetings with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Laws of 1975 of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the South River Board of Education was provided in the following manner. On March 30th, 2021, the notice was delivered to the office of the South River Borough Clerk and posted at the Board of Education Administration Building. On March 30th, 2021 and April 19th, 2021, the notice was faxed, mailed to the following newspapers: Home News Tribune, Sentinel. On March 30th, 2021, the notice was posted at the South River Borough Clerk's office. Due to the state of emergency declared by the state of New Jersey and the United States government regarding COVID-19, this meeting is being held by way of video conference in order for the Board of Education to conduct its business. This meeting is being conducted by way of Zoom, and a link to the meeting invitation has been posted to the district website so the public may join and provide comment. Upon joining the meeting, all participants will have their audio muted. If anyone from the public would like to be recognized during open comment portions of the meeting, they may do so by using the chat feature in Zoom. Here, members of the public must send their name and address to the meeting host, Brian Doherty. You will be recognized to speak by the host at the appropriate time, and your audio will be enabled. Participants for open comment will be called in the order that they were received. This meeting is being recorded, and a link to the meeting will be made available on the district website upon completion. Mr. Kokoska, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Basak?
Here.
Mr. Budson?
Here.
Mrs. Bush?
Mrs. Bush has been excused.
Mrs. Byrne?
Mrs. Byrne has been excused.
Mrs. Lell?
Here.
Mr. Nielsen?
Here.
Mr. Rashatar?
Here.
Mrs. Adowski?
Here.
Mrs. Urbanik?
Here.
Miss Almeida?
Ms. Almeida has been excused. We have a quorum. Thank you. So at this time, the purpose of this meeting is to present and approve the 2021-2022 school budget. As a matter of business, the first item is to open the meeting to visitors. At this time, the public may address agenda items only. There will be a portion at the end of the meeting for visitors and public to once again address the board.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're going to present the school budget first. We're going to do the presentation. We'll present, and then we can open to reception of visitors. So I'll go through the PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll open up to reception of visitors. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay, I was just reading number 3.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so Mr. Doherty, if you could put up on the screen our presentation, I can take it from there. Great, thank you. For this first slide, you'll see our Board of Education members, as well as myself as the Superintendent of Schools, and Mr. Kokoska, who has a great deal of effort and time that he spends helping us put a good budget together for our school district. Mr. Doherty, if you could move to the next slide. Thank you. So how do we come up with a yearly district budget? Well, we begin by looking at our district goals and objectives, and our district goal number 4 is actually our fiscal responsibility goal, which says exactly that. We assess the needs of our students, we assess the needs of the district, and then we align our fiscal resources and prioritize them with those needs. This year was a unique year as we also had to respond to the pandemic and its impact, as well as its forthcoming recovery. So you'll see that embedded within this budget as well. We also, of course, have to keep in mind our Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which gives us our compliance and guidance as to how we are permitted to use district and district funds. And also Every Student Succeeds Act, which is also the compliance that we need to follow as we do our budget planning. And then also our New Jersey Student Learning Standards, a little bit different this year from prior years. Usually we get a lot of data from the New Jersey Student Learning Standards Assessment, a little bit different this year because we don't have that assessment data due to the pandemic. But of course, we do have to implement those standards, and that's what this budget will show. Next slide, please. Thank you. So who was involved in putting this budget together? Well, we, of course, got the feedback from our staff, district administration. We had a meeting with our Board of Education Finance Committee, and then also the full board had an opportunity to review it. I'll talk a little bit more about how exactly that process looks. So our teachers and staff begin by having some conversations within their department or grade level, with their teacher leaders, with their school administrator or department supervisor, and discuss what the needs are for their department, school, grade, etc. We then, Mr. Kokoska and I, we meet with each member of our school administration, so each building principal, as well as each supervisor of departments, and we discuss what the priority needs are. We make some adjustments throughout this process. So for example, if a budget item includes professional development for staff, we might make a recommendation that instead of funding that through our local budget, we use perhaps our federal Title II funds, which are dedicated exactly for professional development. So we still have that item in place. We still move forward with that recommendation, but we might fund it a little bit differently. After those meetings take place, we then meet with with our Board of Education committee. They give us the first level of approval. We send our budget, of course, to the county. We receive their approval to our Board of Education next. Thank you. So in terms of requirements, we know that the New Jersey Department of Education provides a cap, a 2% cap. We'll discuss where that falls into play for this year, a little bit different than previous ones. We, of course, have to align and account for increased costs with our students in special education. Could be transportation, could be tuition and out-of-district placements, etc. We have to take a look at our facilities, figure out what maintenance is necessary in our facilities across all of our buildings in the district. Federal and state mandates. One example of this would be a state mandate that we have to revise a lot of curriculum guides, and we had to budget for that within this budget. That's one example. Safety and security needs to keep our buildings and our students and staff safe. Contract obligations, what we need to do as per contracts and where we need to align our fundings in that regard. We already talked about our Student Learning Standards, our Secondary Education Act, and our Student Succeeds Act. We also have to account for charter schools and the contributions we have to make in that regard. You'll see that moving forward as well. So there's some things that we do to really be fiscally responsible with our budget. We have several co-ops, the Middlesex County Cooperative Pricing System. We use that for supplies, maintenance, and equipment. We explore different revenue sources such as private and public grants that we can take advantage of. If you know anything about our preschool program, that's probably our best example of how we've been able to apply for grant funding and bring a great program into the district. We look at where we can reduce special education costs. For example, if we're able to provide a service in district that we are currently funding in an out-of-district placement, and we can provide the opportunity for students to receive that same service in our less restrictive environment in district, we'll look for opportunities to do that. As well as the Educational Services Commission, which we have an energy program with, as well as our transportation. So this budget enables us to keep our schools fully staffed with qualified personnel. Instructional staff maintains appropriate class size as space allows. And I do want to point that out. Whenever we have an opportunity to reduce class size, whenever we have an opportunity to allocate our budget in that regard, we certainly want to do that. We are at a point where we are having some restrictions in regards to space, and that's actually in all of our buildings. So if you've been following our budget for the last few years, you've probably noticed that we have been adding staff, which is a great thing to have. The more we can balance that ratio between our staff members and students and provide that additional smaller class or additional support service, we want to do that. But we are getting to a point where we're a little bit strapped in regards to space. So that was something we had to consider in this budget. Instructional resources to update and align to those state standards we discussed in the previous slides, and instructional programs. So for this year specifically, we have a new math program coming in grades K to 8. We found that our previous math program, or our current math program, I should say, does lack some alignment with our current standards as these have been changed. And we really needed to update the resource that we were providing our teachers to use in mathematics. You may recall that recently we did the same in language arts, and now we're able to do that for our math program in the 21-22 school year budget. Additional whiteboard desks in the high school for some of our math classrooms. We started to equip our middle school math classrooms with these whiteboard interactive desks, and they've been a very good resource for our teachers and our students. If you can picture our students literally writing on their desks, solving math problems, etc., while the teacher can rotate throughout the classroom and take a look as students work and jot down their thinking. It's been a great tool also for group work. So now we're going to equip the high school with the same type of furniture. An expansion of mental health services through ESS. We're looking to purchase new risers at the high school. The current ones, due to the expanding size of some of our programs, are just not meeting the needs of our students. So we're looking for new updated risers for the high school. Additional Chromebook devices and desktop devices. We're definitely at a one-to-one at this point, but we definitely have some devices that need to be updated or need to be refreshed, renewed. And then we're going to transition. We're going to begin the transition from smart boards to smart TV technology, which will really be a savings to the district in the long run, as these don't require some of those expensive bulbs, upkeep, maintenance, etc. So we'll begin that transition through this budget. In terms of new staffing, we're looking at an additional special education teacher, a high school teacher in our ESL department, and a student information systems specialist in our technology department. We do currently have so many programs that students have accounts for, and it would be great to have somebody who manages all of that information for our students and staff as people move into the district, move out of the district, need certain programs added to their instructional program, etc. In terms of maintenance projects and capital projects, we're looking at the tennis courts, replacing those, resurfacing the track, which is used by not just our students, but the community as a whole. A new roof is needed at the board office and other improvements at the board office as well. And then wiring and infrastructure for our technology. We continue to allocate just over $100,000 to our security personnel. We have 4 full-time Class 3 officers, one at each of our schools. And we are also adding, for this coming year, additional unarmed security staff at the high school. This is for just additional supervision as students transition back, and really to make sure that our students are transitioning back in a healthy and safe format. Here's a long, proud listing of all of our grants and our funding. This is outside of our local budget. These are funds that we receive either from state, federal, or private. There's our preschool expansion grant. You can see that it's about a $1.6 million. And we are currently at 10 preschool classrooms in district that are open, and 2 classrooms that are over at our South Amboy Head Start location, being funded through the preschool grant. ESSA, those are our title funds. ESSER 2, those are newer funds based on pandemic recovery. Perkins, CARES 1, CARES 2, and a safety grant that we work with our insurance company to secure each year. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kokoska, who's going to go over some of the figures in this budget. Brian, you can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you.
You're muted, Ken.
Mr. Kokoski, you have to unmute your mic.
How's that? Is that better?
Much better.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Mrs. Zurcher, if you didn't hear that. Okay, so there are 2 components to the budget, one the revenue side and the expenditure side. This slide reflects the revenue. I'll go over the various components briefly. The first one, it says audited excess surplus. Mrs. Zurcher made reference to one of the slides in the beginning about New Jersey DOE cap. And what it basically means is that the district's only allowed to have so much money, in layman's terms, in their savings account. Anything over the particular percentage that the state imposes must be used for the following budget. And that's where the 1.5 number is made up of. The reason that it's high is that compared to the previous year is that, for just to remember, in the 2021 school year, the 1920 school year, COVID played a major factor in some of our expenses that we had budgeted but we didn't have to use or were required to use. So therefore, this is one of the reasons why there is an excess as far as the surplus is concerned. As a result of that, the unspent funds, which basically means that's our savings account, we didn't have to dip into the savings account. We need to keep a percentage there for emergency purposes. So we did not need to use any of the district's emergency funds, if you will, in this 21-22 budget. The next slide, for those who live in South River, will like to see this because there's no tax increase as relate. What happened? Somebody moved my budget. Okay, thank you. There's no tax increase as it relates to the operating budget for the taxpayers in South River, which is a good thing. State aid, we received, as you can see, there's almost $3.3 million increase from the state as it relates to the operating expense. Medicaid reimbursement is a federal monies. There's a slight decrease from the federal government, somewhat negligible. Miscellaneous income, for those who put money in the bank, I'm sure you can attest to the interest that you're getting back from your money. I think it's 0.5%, maybe 0.2%. So this is a reflection that the district also receives the same interest rate as everybody else. We don't get any different than anybody. So our interest, the money that we get on the money that is in the bank, has been reduced significantly based on the interest rates that that the banks are providing us. Tuition, there's no change. Capital reserve, Mrs. Zurcher made reference to a couple of projects that we plan on undertaking this year. Therefore, a slight increase. Not slight. There's an increase from the previous year. So that comes up to the 40 million. That's the revenue. Brian, could you go to the next page? And these are the expenditures. Mrs. Zurcher alluded to, we're hiring staff. Therefore, there's a increase in the salaries for the staffing. Health benefits, we have seen this past year. Again, COVID in one way is a good thing because the district's premium was not increased or increased very slightly because nobody went to the doctors. So therefore, the claims that the district experienced in the past year were down. So therefore, the insurance companies passed that along to the districts. So we saw a slight decrease in the premium for the 21-22 school year. The tuition, this is the item that was alluded to as far as our special ed students. Mrs. Zurcher also indicated in the cost savings item that we are able to bring back some students. And as you can see there, from the 21 to the 22 school year, there is a decrease in tuition costs. Therefore, the students are being brought back. Let's see, charter school. It was also, that was a mention. Appears to be a same amount that number of students that went from the 21 to the 22 school year, which is probably in the last couple of years. Mr. Rosano, if he was on the board, would be, well, if he could be happy about charter schools, this would be one item that at least he would see that there's not much of an increase from the previous year. The special ed staff-related services, these are programs that Mrs. Zurcher alluded to in her slide as relates to some of the services that are being provided to the special ed population. The maintenance, the 1.1, it's a little misleading. That's what's built in there are our projects. So as you saw, there was around $880,000 in the revenue side for capital and maintenance projects. As you can see, that's the major component is why there is a significant increase in there. The same thing for the technology. There was some comments about infrastructure and wiring and the curriculum that was alluded to. Again, one of the couple of components why you see a little increase in that area. And at the end of the day, there's an increase from to approximately $3.1 million, and therefore your budget has been balanced. Next slide, Brian. Okay, as I indicated to you previously, the amount that we have to raise for just the operating budget is $16.8 million. The evaluation from the town, and this is into our second year, therefore a tax point is $150,000. The rate, as you can see, is not changed because therefore there's no increase. So when you get your tax bill from the one previous year to from last year to the previous year, one will hope to see that at least under the school component in your tax bill, you shouldn't see an increase in your taxes for, again, the school district. Next slide, I think I'm done, but let's see what the next slide says. Yes. I'll pass it back to you, Mrs. Zurcher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kokoska. At this time, I can take any questions from the board, and then we will have our public comment next. Any questions or comments from board members?
I think it'll make the residents happy. You know, like Ken said, COVID was, you know, in some ways gave us a little bit extra. And I have to agree with, you know, Tony in the past that, I mean, even though it's only a slight increase, that's still a substantial amount of money that has to come out of our budget to send kids to the TIC for school. And, you know, I got to, you know, keep that fire burning for Tony. That's money that we can be using here to educate our kids. It's a shame that people feel that the quality of education they can get here in South River isn't up to par. I guarantee it is. So, every little bit helps us.
Sure. And Mr. Nielsen, in that regard, one of the good things is that we've been seeing, really very slight or no increases in that regard, which is good news for the district. It means that our population is keeping the children in our public schools and gaining faith in that regard.
Yeah, I think that the program that you guys started, where you open up the gym and bring everybody in, I think that's really helping. They can see that you can still get a good education in this town. So, we have people who are going on to be doctors, lawyers, the upper echelon of society. So, it can be here. You just got to be a parent that's involved in your child's education and not just kick them out the door in the morning and expect them to learn everything. You got to be there for them. And, I think we give them a real helping hand, and they just need to take advantage of it. That's all.
Okay, then Mrs. Urbanek, we can move forward to reception of visitors.
Okay, I do have one question though, Ms. Zurcher. So we've added a couple of items to the budget, and I'm sure that you've already checked this and answered it, but for the public's sake, can you just confirm that these new hires and this new technology, it will all be sustainable in future years to come? This isn't just a one-shot fix, and it will have to be taken back at some time due to budgetary items. This is all sustainable going forward from here.
Well, what I can say is this, we've been probably for the past 3 years have been able to add staffing to our school district and have had the good fortune to be able to maintain that staff. What I can also say is that when it comes to my process as superintendent and budgeting, whenever we have, and Mr. Kokoska can attest to this, we've had lengthy conversations in this regard. When it comes to a position to have to make cuts, I will look at every avenue possible, and I will look at staffing as a last resort, because it is really a priority for the district to have the right staffing in place for our kids. So that will always be the last place that we go to in my recommendations.
And the same with our new programs too, yes?
Correct.
Great, great, thank you. I'm glad that I brought that up. The public needs to hear that. Like Mr. Nielsen said, this is a great school system, and it just keeps getting better, and it will continue, and it will be sustained. Thank you.
If I can, Mrs. Urbanek, I just would like to thank Ms. Zurcher and Ken for all their hard work on this budget and doing everything that they do to bring additional grants into the district so that the taxpayers have no tax increase. I think it's a sound, solid budget, and I think everybody, I want to thank everybody for putting this together and all their hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Basak. You're on that committee too, so make sure you include yourself in that, in those congratulations. Okay, so at this time now, we will be opening up this meeting to the public, and the public may address any questions that they have on this budget. Please state your name and address in the chat section of the Zoom meeting, and please keep your comments to a 10-minute time limit. We will give you some time to post your question or raise your hand. I don't see anything, or anyone in the chat section. So we're going to close this portion of this meeting, and we're going to turn this over to Ms. Lell to read the resolution. Ms. Lell.
Thank you, Mr. Bannock. The Finance Committee and I thoroughly enjoyed working alongside Ms. Zurcher and Mr. Kokoska as they built the budget with administrators, the staff, and as stated on the slideshow, with the many stakeholders. So having said that, I'd like to read 4.1, approve the 2021-2022 school budget. Be it resolved that the Finance Committee, upon recommendation of the superintendent, recommends that the 2021-2022 budget be approved. Whereas the supporting documentation of this budget also contains an itemization of certain expenditures required under administrative regulations. Whereas capital projects will be funded via a withdrawal from the capital reserve account in the amount of $700,000 for the following projects. My eyes. Tennis courts, total project engineering costs $231,700. Track total project and engineering costs $549,000. Whereas maintenance project will be funded via a withdrawal from the maintenance reserve account in the amount of $100,000 for the following project: Board of Education building roof and maintenance improvements, total project and architectural costs $100,000. Whereas the South River School District Policy Number 9250 and NJAC 6A:23B 1.2b provides that the Board of Education shall establish in the annual school budget a maximum expenditure amount that may be allotted for such travel and expense reimbursement for the 21-22 school year. Whereas the South River Board of Education hereby establishes the school district travel maximum of rate 2021-2022 school year at the sum of $115,403 and the 2021 maximum amount of $72,368 and $7,393 have been spent this year thus far. Whereas the South River Board of Education established an annual maximum school district travel expense for the 2021-2022 school year funded by federal funds at the sum of $13,500 and the 2021 maximum amount is $39,600 and $1,570 has been spent this year thus far. Now be it resolved that the school business administrator shall track and record these costs to ensure that the maximum amount is not exceeded, and I so move.
Thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Lell. Is there a second to that motion?
Nielsen,
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Do any board members have any questions or comments? Mr. Kokoska, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bazak,
Yes.
Mr. Budson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lell,
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen,
yes.
Mr. Rashatar,
Yes.
Mrs. Zadowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Urbanek.
Yes. Thank you. The budget has been passed. Thank you very much. We will now have another reception of visitors. And this is for any concern or comments that they have for the board. Once again, please state your name and address in the chat section of the Zoom meeting. And please keep your comments to a 10-minute time limit. Okay, once again, I do not see any questions in the chat section. So we are going to close this reception of visitors. I'm going to ask for a motion for adjournment.
Nielsen,
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Rashatar.
Second by Mr. Rashatar. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. This meeting is adjourned, and we are going to move on to our regular Board of Ed meeting. And this is the regular meeting of the South River Board of Education for Monday, April 26, 2021. There's a lot of background noise. I'm going to ask if anybody who is not speaking, could they please mute themselves? It would be really appreciated. I thank you. Okay, so we are going to open up our meeting again with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Laws of 1975 of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the South River Board of Education was provided in the following manner. On March 30th, 2021, the notice was delivered to the office of the South River Borough Clerk and posted at the Board of Education Administration Building. On March 30th, 2021, the notice was faxed mailed to the following newspapers: Home News Tribune, Sentinel. On March 30th, 2021, the notice was posted at the South River Borough Clerk's office. Due to the state of emergency declared by the state of New Jersey and the United States government regarding COVID-19, this meeting is being held by way of video conference in order for the Board of Education to conduct its business. This meeting is being conducted by way of Zoom, and a link to the meeting invitation has been posted to the district website so the public may join and provide comment. Upon joining the meeting, all participants will have their audio muted. If anyone from the public would like to be recognized during open comment portions of the meeting, they may do so by using the chat feature in Zoom. Here, members of the public must send their name and address to the meeting host, Brian Doherty. You will be recognized to speak by the host at the appropriate time, and your audio will be enabled. Participants for open comment will be called in the order that they were received. This meeting is being recorded, and a link to the meeting will be made available on the district website upon completion. Mr. Kokoska, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bazak,
Here.
Mr. Budson,
Here.
Mrs. Bush,
Mrs. Bush has been excused.
Mrs. Byrne,
Mrs. Byrne has been excused.
Mrs. Lell.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen,
Here.
Mr. Rashitar,
Here.
Ms. Sadowski,
Here.
Mrs. Urbanek,
Here.
Ms. Almeida.
Ms. Almeida has been excused. Okay, we have a quorum, and the first item of business still remains with our board secretary, Mr. Kokoska, please.
Oh, we have minutes for September 24th, revised, October 29th, and February 25th, 2021 are revised, and the pre-meeting March 18th and March 22nd regular public meeting.
Board members, what is your pleasure on the meeting, on the minutes?
Move the reading of the minutes.
We have a motion by Mr. Nielsen.
Second, Bazak.
We have a second by Mr. Basak. Are there any questions or comments on these minutes as presented? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Use of facilities, we have two items on the agenda from Thursday, Walgreens and the South River Office on Aging. We were in contact with them, and they are aware of the track being renovated, so we have changed the date to June 30th, and they were okay with it.
Thank you. I did ask to have that checked. Board members, your pleasure on this use of facilities?
Move the use of facilities in accordance with board policies.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen,
Second, Rashitar.
second by Mr. Rashitar. Any questions or comments by any board members? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. And continuing on, we have our financial report. Ms. Lill.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby certifies that it is in receipt of the financial report which indicates that no major account has been overexpended and the sufficient funds are available to meet the district's financial obligations for the remainder of the fiscal year. The Finance Committee recommends that the reports of the Board Secretary and the Treasurer of School Monies for February 2021 be approved, and I so move.
We have a motion by Ms. Lell. Is there a second?
Second, Nielsen.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Are there any questions or comments on the financial report? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The motion passes. At this time, we're going to go to our Superintendent of Schools for her monthly report. Ms. Zurcher, please.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Urbanek. The first item actually is the item we just finished discussing, which is our budget. And I do want to let the public know that that budget presentation will be posted on our district website tomorrow. That way the public can go in and view all of those details, reach out with any questions or feedback as well. So we will be posting that tomorrow. It will be on the front page of our budget, and we will also put messages in our social media pages just to simply direct people to where the budget can be found for easy access as well. The next item I have is our school performance reports. These were just recently released for the school year 1920. The report is a little bit different for this year because it is missing the student performance data from the New Jersey Student Learning Standards in language arts, math, and science. There is a bit of an update for standardized assessments that is in Dr. Trevisano's report, and I believe Ms. Lell is going to go over that information when she does her report in instruction for Mrs. Bush tonight. But the information that you can still review for our performance reports includes demographics, attendance, teacher experience, enrollment, and also some of our high school's performance data, most specifically our graduation rate. This is something that we've been working really, really hard towards improving and increasing. I would say 4 years ago, our graduation rate was about fluctuated between 85 to 86%. You can now see that for 1920, the graduation rate is at 93.8. And even in school year 1819, the previous year, it was at 91.5. So we continue to be in the right direction in that regard, increasing the rate from school year 1819 of 91.5 to 93.8 in school year 1920. We have been working throughout the year, and especially challenging year, for students in meeting their course requirements, being online, accessing their instruction virtually. Our graduation rate committee, we meet approximately every 8 weeks, and we review every student who is at risk. Any student who we become aware is looking to drop out of high school because that might be the only option they have. And we've been working with families, with students to give them a different option, whether it's our alternative high school, credit recovery, anything we need to do to work with families and work with students. Certainly not to give them the grades away. No, we're not giving grades away. We're not giving a graduation diploma away, but it's just really about having a personalized approach with students and families, seeing what the barriers are that exist and really getting kids through those barriers in order to make significant strides. So we're very proud of this graduation rate, and we are hopeful that we can, at minimum, be able to maintain it. It would be great to even increase it further, but it certainly has been a challenging year in that regard. Standardized assessments, I just spoke to that for a bit. One of the things I do want to point out is that our access testing for our ELL students, for our ESL population, and our DLM testing for our special education population is moving forward this spring. So we've been reaching out to families. Those tests are going to be administered in person. So even for our virtual students, we are providing them an opportunity to come in and be assessed in person, the way those assessments have to be administered. And we are hoping that we have a good participation rate. We are looking to receive access testing scores probably in August. Not sure about DLM, but we are hopeful that we can have some of these results before the fall, giving us a real good idea of where we need to place our students, what level of services they should receive, how we can better support the needs of our students based on what that assessment data shows us. We are, as a state, and again, this will be in Dr. Trevisano's report in instruction, we are going to be administering the STAR Strong assessments in the fall, and therefore collecting some assessment data from our students this coming fall in September when we open school for the new school year. One of the things I do want to point out, while we haven't had standardized testing assessments in place since school year 1920, we are using our internal assessments as best as we can to continue to monitor student progress. So this is very important. We have our iReady assessment. We also have been providing our teachers with an avenue to be able to tell us what level of engagement students have been in throughout the pandemic, if they have been able to log in consistently while we were on virtual instruction, if they have been attending their courses regularly, etc. So we are using whatever information we have internally to still be able to analyze our students' needs. But with that being said, and us really being able to move forward this year, today was our very first day of a full 5-day school week for our in-person students. All of our pre-K to 8 students are attending a full day of school. Our high schoolers are still dismissing at 1 o'clock and then logging back in for their office hours after that time. We have, in terms of numbers, I think today at the high school, we had just over 180 students. That is our lowest, actually, in-person population. But even at the high school, we see that increasing little by little. At the middle school, we had just above 200. At the elementary school, over 400. And then our primary school is just about 400 as well. So we're definitely seeing that our youngest students who really do need to be in school, in person, have been coming to school and have been really just taking advantage of the fact that we moved from our hybrid schedule to the 4-day schedule to now a 5-day. And end of year activities and celebrations. The last time we met for the pre-meeting on Thursday, I said I was hoping to have an update for you based on information released from the Department of Education and the Governor's Office. And at about, I want to say 2:30 p.m. this afternoon, we received some updates in this regard. We do see an increase in the number of people who are going to be allowed at graduation ceremonies, putting us in a position where we will very likely be able to hold a graduation ceremony very much like we did last year in July, but we'll be able to do so at our regular graduation date. So we'll be posting some information about that now that we have the new guidance. New guidance also came out about prom. We have already been putting information out to our families in that regard, but please continue to check our ERAMs, our messages, our social media pages. As the information does continue and the guidance does continue to change, we will continue to modify and adjust also. And lastly, on my report, I did want to let the public know that we now have a new social media page. That's our Instagram page. You can click right from the front page of our district website. It takes you right to our Instagram page or our Facebook page. The one thing that's been great about adding Instagram is that different audiences do tend to gravitate to different social media forums. So we know that we capture a lot of our community members, a lot of our parents on our Facebook page. We know that we capture a lot of our students. on our Instagram page. So this really just widens our audience pool, widens our access to be able to provide information across different audiences, different age groups, different community members. And I think this was from last week. We had over 1,500 followers on our Facebook page. Our following on Instagram, even though it's pretty new, has been growing. And we get a lot of views on some of our posts, including one that was that went from Instagram to our governor's Twitter page and received 119,000 views, which was about our vaccination clinic for teachers. So there's definitely people that are out there and looking at what's happening in our district, and this is a great way to get information out to them. And so concludes my report for this month, Mrs. Urbanek.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Zurcher, and a comprehensive report it is. Is there a motion on the superintendent's report?
Nielsen, motion, read it as read.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Rochester.
Second by David Rochatar. Are there any questions or comments on any items that were so thoroughly covered? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So at this time, we will have our first open public session of our Board of Ed meeting. And once again, the public may address agenda items only at this time. There will be a session at the end of the meeting for other matters that you may wish to discuss. Please state your name and address in the chat section of the Zoom meeting, and please keep your comments to a 10-minute time limit. And I don't see where anybody has raised their hand or posted anything in the chat section. So we will close this portion of the meeting and move on to our consent resolution. Mr. Kokoska?
Thank you. The South River Board of Education, by means of a consent resolution, adopt various resolutions of a routine and non-controversial nature at one time. And whereas below listed resolutions are hereby adopted by said Board of Education in whole, as if the same were individually acted upon. Under President of the Board, items 5.2 to 5.4, Finance 8.1 through 8.32, Instruction 9.1 through 9.3, Policy and Legislation 11.1 and 11.2, Human Resources 12.1 through 12.26, and Safety and Risk 13.1 through 13.3.
Thank you. Can we have a motion on the consent resolution?
Nielsen, move the consent resolution.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Azak?
Second by Mr. Bezak. Are there any questions or comments, abstentions, or any items that any board member wishes to have read separate? Seeing none, would you please call the roll, Mr. Kokoska?
Mr. Bezak,
Yes.
Mr. Budson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lell,
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen,
Yes.
Mr. Rochatar,
Yes.
Ms. Sadowski,
Yes.
Mr. Bannock.
Yes. Thank you. So under President of the Board, we do have 3 items that were covered under the consent resolution. That was to adopt the rules for the governing board for the 21-22 school year, approve our designated papers, and our designated tax shelter annuity companies. Moving on to our committee reports, athletics. Mr. Budson, please.
Nothing on the agenda for this month. That's all.
Thank you. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Nielsen, anything?
Nothing new since last meeting, Madam President.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Lell?
I know we covered under consent, but there were a couple of changes that I just want to make sure that I note. So 8.28 was a revised requisition list. 8:30 was the addition to approve the contract addiction treatment technologies with the LLC DBA Care Solace multilingual mental health support services provider for the 2021 school year. And then we also had 8.31 and 8.32. They were addition to approve contract French and Perlo Associates engineering services for the high school STEPS project. And 8.32, which was the addition to approve applications and amendment DI Group Architecture LLC for the weight room wing building envelope repairs and improvements and athletic track reconstruction. And that was all that was new since our last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you please continue on with instruction?
I will. So with instruction, I'm going to open up the other part. I want to start with what Ms. Bush stated the other evening, which was the information related to Dr. Trevisano's report. A lot of it was mentioned by Ms. Zurcher. Oh, look, I called you Dr. Zurcher. I'm thinking ahead already from Ms. Zurcher earlier about the access and the DLM testing occurring, but how the state waived the spring administration, like they canceled it, and then their requirements are being placed for the New Jersey Start Strong assessment in the fall of 2021. He mentioned also continuing the final Google certification sessions, a sheltered instruction series presented by Gabriella Colon. Teachers, leaders, administrators were all working on a professional development day that they want to do in May with topics that support our staff. So as we wrap up this school year, thinking ahead for next school year. And then he also mentioned some of the new courses, like the new American Sign Language course, how the students at the high school had completed the scheduling process for their core classes with the assistance of the teachers. And he gave a comprehensive explanation with some additional details related to that. Monday night, Ms. Bush mentioned 9.1. So there are two new additions for instruction, with 9.2 being addition approved the professional development and travel expenses for the 2021 school year, and 9.3, which was addition adopt the revised district calendar for the 21-22 school year. And that is all I had under instruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parton, do we have any news under negotiations?
No additions since our discussions on Thursday.
Thank you. Mr. Rashitar, policy and legislation.
Nothing additional from Thursday.
Human resources, Mr. Bazak, please.
Thank you. I have 4 additional items since Monday evening. Item 12.23, approved disability sick leave, Patricia Terci Medina, middle school language arts teacher, 2020-2021 school year. Item 12.24, approved curriculum writing revisions, 2020-2021 school year. Item 12.25, approved salary adjustment, Jennifer Darty, preschool master teacher, 2020-2021 school year. And item 12.26, approved disability sick leave, Christine Kilduff, elementary school education teacher, 2020-2021 school year. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Safety and risk management, Mrs. Sadowski.
Thank you, Mrs. Urbanic. There is nothing new from Thursday night's meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rashitar, school community relations, please.
There's one additional press release, and it's a calendar of the week of giving that's culminating in the day of giving for the Foundation for Educational Excellence. And you can see it goes by the acronym SRFEE. It just kind of runs down how there's going to be a virtual walkthrough of the history of surfing. And that's it.
Thank you. Do we have anything from our school board borough council liaison committee, Mr. Nielsen?
Nothing tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Mrs. Sadowski, our PTA liaison.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about again what I talked about on Thursday. The SRFEE mini grant, as well as Mrs. Matthews, were able to provide a virtual weather assembly for the elementary school that went over very well with the kids. And basically, all the PTAs are gearing up for Teacher Appreciation Week and the events that are occurring in May. And they're trying to come up with some fun activities for the end of the school year for the kids. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Our South River Public Library liaison, Mr. Budzen.
Two events that are coming up for the library is May 4th at 6 p.m. is the Star Wars Day. And they're having a used book sale, the Friends of the Library, May 25th to the 28th. And that's all I have.
Thank you. South River Foundation for Educational Excellence liaison, Mr. Rashtatar.
Thank you, Mrs. Urbanek. There's a brief video, instructional video on how to give to the foundation. Brian, can you play that?
Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Oswald. I am the Vice President of SRFE, and I'm very excited to share with you how you can help support SRFE by joining us next week when we take a virtual walk down memory lane. And I'm going to show you how you would donate. So there's a few ways to find the donate button. You can either click up here to support SRFE, and then click on donate. That will bring you directly to our donate page. Click here and that brings you to our donate page on PayPal. Or you can also scroll all the way to the bottom. If you're using a phone, you can also point your camera at this QR code here, and that will also bring you to this same donation page that this button brings you to. Once you're there, there are some suggestions of how much to donate. We put $5, $25, or $50, or any other amount you so choose. And for our day of giving with our contest, here is the drop-down option to let us know which school you are going to be donating for. Now, our goal is to have at least a minimum of $5 per student in our school district. So that is what our goal is. Of course, if you're able to and can donate more, that would be greatly appreciated. And I just wanted to show you where that goes. If you are so inclined to make this a monthly donation, you can just check this little box here. Otherwise, as we are a nonprofit, it would help if you are willing to add this as well. This would help to offset the cost of the processing. It's minimal fees, just based on the amount that you donate. So you can donate through PayPal or with a debit or credit card. I just kind of wanted to share that with you. It'll walk you through the process. And that is basically it. So thank you so much for coming to our virtual walk down memory lane. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
I'd just like to add that all of this information, including the schedule for this week, the walk down memory lane, it's available on both the foundation webpage and on the Facebook page. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rashtatar. Our student board representative could not make the meeting this evening. Is there anything under our attorney's report?
No, there's nothing for this evening.
And is there any old or new business to come before the board? Seeing none, we'd like to pay the bills. Ms. Lell?
Thank you. The Finance Committee recommends that all bills presented having been certified by the School Business Administrator Board Secretary be paid as listed, and I so move.
Motion by Ms. Lau,
Second by Nielsen.
second by Mr. Nielsen. Any questions or comments on the bill list? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, we are once again going to open up the meeting for the reception of visitors, and the public may address any concern or comment that they have for the board. Please state your name and address in the chat section of the Zoom meeting, and please keep your comments to a 10-minute limit. So the only thing that we do have in the chat section is Ms. Danielle Oswald, who has given us her address for SRFEE, if anybody wishes to use that for any type of correspondence. And I do not see anything else in the chat. We are going to close this portion of the chat, of the public portion, and we have no executive session. So right now, there is a motion for adjournment in order.
Mrs. Urbanek, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Mrs. Oswald said she wanted to say something briefly before you go. Is that permitted?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yes, of course. There was no motion made to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mrs. Oswald.
Hi, sorry about that. Danielle Oswald, 16 Garwood Street. Here representing South River Foundation for Educational Excellence, in case you couldn't tell by my virtual background. I just wanted to share, since we've started SRFE, we've given out over 32 teacher grants totaling over $10,000, and we've given out 18 scholarships totaling over $2,800. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to do. And with COVID this past year, it was hard to do our dinner dance. Obviously, we weren't able to do it. So I would encourage everyone to go to our website and just take a look at the scholarships that we've been able to offer, the mini grants that we've been able to provide. It's really exciting to see how the students loved the weather assembly and other things that they've been able to do. So thank you for your support with our week walk down our memory lane and our day of giving. I appreciate the help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oswald. It's a great organization, and we appreciate any help we can get in the schools here. And your organization has definitely made a difference. Any other board members? Okay, so at this time then, since there are no more people in the chat room, we're going to close this portion and move on to adjournment of the meeting.
Nielsen.
Lau.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, second by Ms. Lell. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.